Right with everyone. G'day all. Welcome to muster number 7, probably the last muster for 2022. We're recording this for those who couldn't attend. Thanks Rob, Christoph, Kim and Sam for joining us. We've also got Toby from the Carbon Farming Foundation who's going to present to us later on. I'll just quickly run through the agenda for today. As usual, RFM updates, then the external presenter, in this case Toby, and then we'll kick Toby out and do any troubleshooting that we need to do. So pre-work, I'm hoping that, actually that kind of goes to one of the updates. Has everybody put in pre-work who's got invoices to put in? And if you have, great. I haven't checked it today. I've been busy. In terms of Regen advisor updates, I guess there's a few. One is that invoices. So we were hoping to use the information of when an onboarding was happening and then do what's called a customer generated tax invoice, i.e. raise the invoice on your behalf to us every time we did an onboarding. But it's just proving to be a pain in the bottom and falling through the cracks. So a much simpler thing, when you do a job, and this will apply particularly to Danny, who's owed about 4 customer generated tax invoices, just raise the invoices, send them directly to me. There's an internal process now where I go approved for payment and send it off to Deloitte, and they will pay your invoice and it will all get reconciled to QuickBooks or whatever we're using, Xero. There's big changes afoot in 2023. We've kind of heralded these a bit with the name change from a landscape agronomist to a regen advisor. And there's the opportunity in the near future to have an assessment processes. So we've got some LRF funding expected in February. So all Queensland farmers who want can apply for $10,000 worth of funding from the Land Restoration Fund to be spent with accredited advisors on preparation work required for a carbon project. So
I've got a little update on that too.
Yeah.
So I had a conversation with Curida on Friday.
Yeah.
Who are the management body for that funding. And they have made a determination that all farmers wanting to access that funding must have a farm resilience plan.
Awesome. Okay. And that's the one with the template that you can get from online, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll make sure that we report back. You know, we want to basically compare the 3 sort of service providers: Carbon Farming Foundation, who we're going to hear from Toby in a second, Christoph, and Carbon Store. And I'm expecting that each will have like methods and processes or strengths and comparative weaknesses, but we want to be able to utilize that to actually know where the gaps are and what we can do in combination together. And I guess that brings us to another point. And Christoph, you're about to yarn.
Yes. Sorry about that. I know what the results is going to be out of that check. I know who's going to be the best, have the best processes. No, just kidding. My real question was, Kim, what did you say was a good thing that they have farm resilience plan? It's a bit of a pain to fill in. It's going to reduce the people who want to do it.
I didn't say it was a good thing. I said it was a good thing to get the information.
Yeah.
Farm planning generally is a good process for farmers. Makes them stop and put things down out of their head and really consider what they're doing. So in a regenerative space, it's a really good option for them to do that work. It can be a bit clunky, that document, but
exactly. Totally agree with the principle, but the document, my God, a lot of people would go, yeah, don't want to do it. Oh, I'm afraid.
Correct.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Correct.
Yeah.
But if it's tied to funding, that's
Maybe
the way
that'll
it
push
is.
them.
I mean-
Okay. I was trying to see whether we can find a way of making that process a little bit simpler for them, whether we can template an answer based on, no, we can't
Yeah.
actually.
Yes,
Anyway,
we can.
that was
Yes,
my
we can.
question.
And
Okay.
Carbonate has done that.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
they've actually
Okay.
adapted it.
Okay, because yes, otherwise it's not something that is very user friendly. Okay, cool.
Correct.
Do you mind sharing that Carbonate thing? Is it possible?
I have to take advice on that, sorry.
Yeah, of course, I understand. Okay, thank you. So that was it. Thank you.
No, it's a really good point. And I mean, we're doing some work with Deloitte around DrSat, the Drought Resilience Self-Assessment Tool, which will be I don't know what it'll be used for, but Drought Hubs probably, and how different or equivalent it is to the Q Riders Drought Resilience Farm Plan. It would be interesting just to compare those things as well. Look, there'll be some additional updates to talk about post Toby, but we have here Toby, and maybe Toby, as we've not met, I don't really feel comfortable to introduce you adequately. Would you mind introducing yourself and then taking us through your presentation? And then plenty of time for Q&A from the folks here. And there's no such thing as silly questions. I'm sure somebody else has got a question offline that is waiting for you to ask them. Over to you, Toby.
Cool. Thanks, Waddy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, so my name's Toby, and I'm a carbon project facilitator at the Carbon Farming Foundation. We're a relatively new organisation, a not-for-profit organisation that was started to basically accelerate the uptake of carbon farming in doing so. So I'll just share my screen. Give me a sec. Oh, I can actually. Oh, host only.
And Toby, physically, where are you in the world? Are you over in WA or are you?
I am, yeah. I'm actually based in Margaret River.
Oh, cool.
In Western Australia, yeah. You guys seeing my screen there? Oh no, not yet.
Not yet.
There we go. So I'm used to using Teams. Haven't used Zoom in a little while. Can you guys see that now?
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent. Cool. Yeah, so this morning I'll just take you through, I'll just scoot you through our process and basically how we guide landowners through the carbon farming process. Yeah, I'll just jump into it. This is just a little disclaimer that it's basically not very necessary for a presentation like this, but we sort of have to include it in everything. If you want to have a look at our financial services guide, you can, I'll send through the slide deck after this and you can click through to that. But yeah, I wouldn't sweat on that. But a little bit about us. So at the Carbon Farming Foundation, we believe that carbon should be grown, managed and sold just like any other agricultural crop. We want to make it as easy as possible for farming businesses to tap into the carbon opportunity. And we think that farmers should just need the right tools in their arsenal to successfully build carbon while playing within, the rule book of the methodologies. We're really big on transparency. We have a team building educational resources and insights from our project delivery to demystifying carbon farming in general. And you can check that all out via our education hub from our website. We're also really big on farmer autonomy. So, choosing your level of service, we like to provide basically like an a la carte menu of options with different price tags associated that farmers can chew off according to their own skill level and based on like what they actually need, because we totally understand that most farmers are sort of jack of all trades. And we have a lot of flexibility built into our contract and our way of working. So no locking contracts and no obligation to continue past project establishment under our contracts. Yeah, basically we just want to make it as easy as possible and as scalable as possible so that we can accelerate the industry towards carbon neutrality. So when we first came into this space, we started in October of 2020, and our founders, Norman Pater and co-founder and CEO Lockie Ritchie, were doing a bit of digging in the space and having a look at the existing landscape. And what they identified was there was only really two options in the carbon space. You could either sort of go it alone and navigate it all by yourself, which is incredibly confusing and difficult to do because there's a lot of aspects from the, you know, the on the ground specifics to playing within the rules of the methodologies, which are pretty in depth. All the admin dealing with the regulator, which can be a bit of a pain in the neck. And then the market side can be super confusing and difficult as well. And then on the flip end, there's sort of like the full service model with developers who they do a great job. They definitely can deliver projects successfully, and there's definitely a place for that. But they do take quite a lot of the autonomy away from farmers and take quite a hefty percentage of the credits, and you're generally locked in. So when we were sort of designing our approach, we decided to come in somewhere in the middle with our DIY carbon farming approach. So yeah, as I said before, we sort of feel as though carbon should be grown, managed and sold just like any other crop. And the best way of doing that is providing total flexibility through the DIY model. So yeah, you can choose your level of service. You can access templates and resources for, you know, self-learning through the journey, as well as chatting with us, our remote service team, to help guide you through the whole way through. And we advocate for sort of working with local partners for on-the-ground delivery. I'll chat a little bit more on that in the next slide because that's quite a core part. But basically, we don't rack up costs for us traveling all over Australia. We'd prefer to be remotely based because yeah, that's where we can work best on our strengths in terms of navigating the process and providing like a good compliance and process sort of facilitator role, rather than actually telling people how they can, like, you know, actually build soil carbon or successfully establish trees, you know, on the other side of the country. No lock-in or exclusivity in our contracts, and you hold on to 100% of the carbon credits, or the landowner holds on to 100% of the carbon credits. We actually used to take a small chunk of carbon credits in our model, but we recently moved away from that. The thinking behind it previously was that it showed we had skin in the game and that we were sort of sharing the risk. But what we were finding increasingly from our client base is that it didn't really represent that much, to be honest, like the small chunk that we were taking, and they'd just prefer to have full control over their carbon credits. So we've recently moved to a full fee for service model and allowing landowners to take 100% of the carbon credits. So the partnership approach, basically our delivery model is built on a three-way partnership. So our role is to be the carbon project facilitator in this partnership. So we're a remote support team that exists to make sure that the project follows the rules while optimizing results and minimizing the risks, and just making sure that everything plays out in a logical step-by-step process. We're sort of developing an end-to-end project management software package called DIY Carbon, which aims to reduce landholders' needs for services, particularly in ongoing management of the project. So far, it's only really been built out for the project feasibility side, but eventually where we'll get to is like a one-stop shop for managing all the carbon projects that you might need to be running on farm if you're running one or multiple. The landowner's role in the project is to provide the land, run the farm, and coordinate all the on-ground activities. So they really sit in the driver's seat. And then local experts like agronomists or foresters, or, you know, perhaps even, you know, NRMs or land cares can help to provide on the ground and locally specific services and advice for successful project delivery. So that's what I was saying. Like, I don't want to sit over here in Margaret River and be working with a client who's setting up a soil carbon project in, say, Victoria or Queensland, and telling them that I know how they can be building soil organic carbon in their soils, because it's nonsensical, really. Like, they really should be working with expert providers in that region who are part of the community, understand the landscape, and can really have an impact. And they're just a bit more accessible as well. You know, they're there and can be on the ground and available. So the DIY approach is all about harnessing the local experts where needed, rather than taking an expensive fly in and fly out approach. So the landowner is in the driving seat of the relationship, with the third parties there to support and ensure that the provider's support ticks the boxes for a compliant carbon farming project. Yeah. This is our menu of services. So basically we offer feasibility services up front. They're provided on a fee for service. And they can provide like a detailed feasibility analysis. I can send you through a bit of a products and services brochure that sort of breaks down how these look specifically. And then once we've got a contract in place and we move into the setup services, you can sort of choose from a few different packages, whether it be, you know, an economy or ultra DIY approach, where we just sort of provide, you know, the bare minimum that, and then the farmer or the landowner is able to sort of tackle the rest because they're pretty savvy and switched onto it. Then there's like the standard and the premium where there's just sort of elevated levels of support from us. And then once you move through that into the ongoing services, there's optional service packages and hourly rate support available. This is just a quick little case study on one of the projects that we've got on the ground at the moment. We've been working with Pro10, who are a leading broiler chicken provider over in New South Wales. We were working with their Narrandera property in the Riverina region. We partnered with local providers, Cassinia Environmental and Riverina River Vegetation, to deliver the project. Planted 200 hectares of biodiverse trees. It was local flora, vegetation communities, and it was cultural heritage was prioritised. There was a lot of native species planted, and a mixture of direct seeding and seedlings was the approach that they opted for. It was site prepped in April and planted in June. And our role was to conduct the feasibility process and connect Pro10 with the trusted local forestry specialists who delivered the project. We provided learning templates, resources and services to guide compliant project design, registration and delivery. And now that it has been, like the project sort of has been established, we've also dived into providing some post-planting plans and sort of confirming that our forward abatement estimates were correct. And sort of putting together docs to guide what we could do better next time, what went really well, and just collating all that data necessary for when it does come time for project reporting and submitting offset reports and actually getting credits issued. So that's a big part of the process once you do go into that ongoing MRV stage. This is just a quick snapshot of the three methodologies that we do predominantly work with. So our current offering of our DIY approach covers native tree carbon or reforestation, soil carbon and plantation forestry. All of these sit under the Clean Energy Regulator or the Emission Reduction Fund. And if you do want to chat further about any of these, I can dive into the specifics and we can look at even specific projects if you'd like. We're also working on a couple of projects. We're sort of working to establish a couple of other methodologies with private regulators in Australia, just to help cover off some of the cracks that we've identified in the ERF system and sort of provide a better service to Australian landowners, basically. That's just a bit of a summary of some of our clients. And yeah, would love to chat through any questions that anyone might have.
Toby, that was awesome. Of the farmers that I know, you're young, like us as an organization, we're leaning heavily on people like Christoph, who were the lone wolf in your description, who went out and kind of did it for themselves. What have you got any other projects registered apart from Pro10, or is that your first, or are there?
That was one of our first, but we actually have projects registered in Victoria as well. We've been working closely with Cobram Estate Olives. We've got a couple of registered projects over here in WA. Haven't got any in South Australia yet. We do have a plantation project signed in Tasmania and have been looking at a few reforestation projects as well. We've got one reforestation project kicking off in southeast Queensland. I think planting is starting next year. And so we're right in the thick of getting that all organized. And yeah, there's plenty more that are sort of just on the precipice, just on the cusp of ticking over into getting everything set up. But obviously it's a pretty busy time of year for farmers at the moment. So we're currently working on building processes and waiting for the rush post-harvest.
We're the same. Basically, it's shut till January now because farmers.
Yeah, crazy.
I've handed over to the crew, but if I could request that we do get into the specifics around pricing, because what we want to be able to advise clients is that they are their own project proponents, and then how they actually go forward as a project proponent, what type of advice they get, what sort of value for money that looks like is
Yep.
kind of useful for us. But before you get into that detail, maybe Sam, Rob, Christoph, Kim, over to you for real questions.
So I've got a couple of questions. So you had a 200 hectare farm there. In your sales to that client, I mean, what is he expecting? I really would like to know about the smallest area that would be suitable as well. But what is he expecting as a return?
So it wasn't a 200 hectare farm, it was a 200 hectare project.
Yes.
So I think the property was probably closer to maybe like 600 hectares, maybe
Yeah.
even larger from memory. I can't remember the exact forward abatement estimates and profitability off the top of my head, sorry, but we do have like a few examples of like feasibility assessments that we've provided, like that we've got on our website. So I can send through articles and sort of a breakdown of those kind of feasibility assessments if you'd like.
I mean, in our sort of area, we're always talking about 200 hectares is probably a minimum for this sort of thing. Is that
Yep.
true for you too?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's highly variable. If we're talking reforestation, like high rainfall areas, with it all comes back to that full cam model. But we generally do say that around about that 200 hectare mark is where it becomes a viable project. But it's also always worth just running a feasibility assessment and sort of playing with the assumptions a little bit as well, because some farmers, if they're able to provide more of a DIY approach, then that can sort of cut costs. And it depends if they're maybe a little bit more optimistic about where the carbon price is heading, and that can sort of impact on the viability of a project as well. But yeah, we do, like, when I'm talking to farmers, I generally say 200 hectares is about the safe space. But yeah, that does vary.
I mean, I'm just working with sort of lifestylers, and they've obviously got things like 20 hectares and so forth.
Yeah, I know it's really difficult, isn't it? Because their heart's in the right place, but it's just not there yet.
No.
But I suppose that's when you can start to look at things such as aggregation. We are working on one aggregation project over here in WA at the moment. It's a headache, to be honest, and obviously someone's got to be the project proponent, and then it's just like there's a lot to coordinate in that, but it is a potential solution to addressing like those smaller landowners wanting to get in on it. I suppose that would be something that Regen Farmers Mutual could be potentially interested in, if that was. I think I remembered you mentioning something along that lines of that in the NRM webinar. Hey, Wardy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just clear that one up for you. We're looking particularly on that North Coast, Northern Rivers area about how can we bring multiple farmers into a proponent where the Regen Farmers Mutual's the proponent, and we might be able to aggregate those smaller landholders. But we need to do it in a coordinated way, because the carbon itself doesn't pay for the cost of the admin on the project. So it has to have biodiversity or hydrology or other benefits in a landscape. So we're working with PIPAP and others to try and find that funding, but we haven't got that yet.
Just on that, sorry.
No, go for it. And then Christoph, you've got your hand up, but go Toby.
I was wondering, there was obviously that news launched the other day about the High Impact Partnership Community Grant in New South Wales. And when we were sort of looking at that, we thought that was probably something that would be up the Regen Farmers Mutual alley because it sort of excluded for-profit carbon developers, and it sort of looked at multi-party approaches. Obviously, that's a pretty big fish one. It was I think it was a minimum co-contribution of 500k, which is
Yeah.
pretty solid. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you guys were thinking in playing in that space at all.
Well, that's the sort of thing that can help the Northern Rivers. But we still, yeah, in early days, we've been chatting with PIPAP and yeah, it's in negotiation. Yeah. Over to you, Christoph.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, awesome, terrific. I love the middle. As Wally was saying, I've been the lone wolf and it's not pleasant. So well done. And apologies because the storm's coming and I probably missed 25% of your presentation, Toby. So apologies if I ask a question that's been
No worries at all.
mentioned. Do you do your feasibility entirely offline, or where does it start to be on the ground?
So generally, like the whole feasibility process is done, yeah, based on desktop assessment. For
Right.
something like a soil carbon FISO, it's a little bit more in depth. Like we generally ask the client to provide their own estimate on what they believe, like what percentage increase in soil organic carbon they think they can reach based on their management practice change. So we always
Right.
advocate for them working closely with an agronomist on that, and ask them to send sort of soil tests based on where they've currently been. But for plantation forestry and reforestation, it's pretty much just all desktop assessment because it's pretty
Right.
stock standard with FullCam, and we can sort of just play with all the assumptions and sort of workshop it with the client as well. And then the next step after that for like a reforestation or a plantation project would be to have a site inspection conducted, just to sort of ground truth all the assumptions made. And then, yeah, for a soil carbon project, we generally advocate for getting some sort of pre-baselining done with some of those crews like Precision Pastures or Precision Ag, ones that we use quite often, just to sort of get a bit more of an understanding before diving in into the project delivery side of
Okay.
things.
Have you so two more questions and then I'll
Yeah.
leave the mic alone.
No worries.
Yeah, have you tried for SOC? Have you tried remote technologies instead of sampling? Because sampling is always expensive. That was the first question. And second question that you might have mentioned during your presentation is all the audit costs are borne by the farmer.
Yeah, so all the audit costs are built into our financial model. We generally model for about 3 audits across the lifetime of the project.
Yeah.
And then and also we can help with like pre-audits as well, making sure everything's all set up and tickety-boo in the right place. And then on the remote sampling, we haven't been using, we do work closely with people like FarmLab for stratification. And then we work with Hone Labs as well, and their spectrometry unit, because that helps to sort of drastically reduce the cost of the sampling in ongoing sampling rounds as well. But yeah, so far we've just been working with sampling crews though. There has been a lot of exciting stuff coming out though recently. Like I saw that most recent Landline episode with some of those soil carbon technologies, and even a few more. I saw that Verterra, don't know if you guys are familiar with them, Verterra Ecological, I think they're called. They seem to be working on some similar tech as well. So we haven't really dived too deep into that space just yet, but it's definitely on our radar. And yeah, we're always looking for ways to make it cheaper for the landowners.
I've used Downforce 4 times. It's impressive.
Yeah. Okay.
Very interesting. Yeah.
And
So,
have you ground truthed their findings? Does it stack up?
Only once, and it was polar opposite. The ground truth was 0.41% SOC, and their technology was 1.2.
Right.
But to be very honest, I'll have to go myself at the sampling site to check where it was, because I really can't tell which one would be would be wrong. As you know, sampling is not guaranteed to be more accurate. But you're dead right. That was my one question, and the test didn't go. But I don't know what for. I don't know why. So
Yeah.
watch this space. I'll let you know.
It's a tricky
I have
one,
ground
isn't it?
truth. Yeah, I have ground trusted with not proper ERF sampling, but agricultural type sampling, and it was very, very accurate. But that was only the
Ah.
top 25. Yeah.
Yeah.
So three
Yeah,
times
okay.
was very accurate, one completely off, but that was the ERF sample type approach. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's
Yeah.
an
We're-
exciting,
we're struggling.
exciting and confusing space, isn't it? The soil sampling
Yeah,
side of
exactly.
things.
But if it can be confirmed, that'd be awesome. Anyway, there were my
Yeah.
questions. And pricing, as Wally was saying, pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. Was that Sam? Did you have a question as well?
Yeah, just about so the people that have come on board and have gone ahead with you guys to register a project, what's the customer demographic looking like? What's the commonality between them that's taken them from inquiry all the way through?
To be honest, like we've been early on, we were sort of just keen to chat to anyone, and like when we first came in, we sort of wanted to make carbon farming accessible to any farmer. But to tell you the truth, like we've had a lot of conversations, and it's just got to the point with so many clients where it's just become too hard basket.
Mhm.
And so, for your average Ma and Pa farmers, it's just like they're already flat chat, that they've got so much on already, and then to get their head around carbon farming and be ready to dive into it when it's still, it's still in the early stages. It's still so early. I think I heard a conversation the other day that about only like 1%. There's only been like the 1% uptake in carbon farming projects.
No,
so far.
0.01.
0.01. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like so small. So like we've actually we had a bit of a reshift in our target demographic, and we're sort of because we were having a lot more success with corporates.
Yeah.
And it kind of does make sense, to be honest, at these early stages, because they've got whole sustainability teams who they trust and understand the science behind it, and they've got a lot of them have like net zero pledges hanging over their heads that they sort of need to race towards, and also they've just got they've got more team members and they've got money to burn on taking the risk, and then like our thinking is once these projects are getting established, and they're all over Australia, other farmers will be able to have a look at see that it's working and see that it is sort of start to take off, and then it'll be able to scale. End of feasibility and the pointy end of contracts signing, and farmers, Ma and Pa farmers will just be like, well, like great, but I haven't anyone in our region this. So they're inherently where salesmen, which is fair, but that's why we've sort of adjusted our target currently to be more corporates, because they sort of understand our model. It's easy to keep rolling it out, but that's why a core component of our business model is our education hub and our outreach team, so that we can just continue to publish all of our learnings and make it as accessible as possible, so that all farmers can start to get their head around carbon farming, feel a bit more comfortable with it, and then be ready to dive in later down.
Is it right to say that those corporates that are coming on board are just pretty much, to describe it fairly bluntly, they're just choosing a little corner off to the side to register?
They're what, sorry?
Are they just choosing a small corner off to the side of one of their land holdings to register a 300-400 hectare bid, or are they doing a decent chunk, or what's the go?
Yeah, no, big chunks. Yeah, they're obviously, in terms of like their whole portfolio size, some of them are like relatively small, but they're they're trying to get their hands on credits, and so they're trying to go fairly big.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it is that there is a lot happening in that space. They're all pretty onto it, the corporates. It's very front of mind.
Cool, thanks.
No
Thank you,
worries.
Sam. Kim, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Toby. It was really good. I just wanted to ask quickly, you mentioned some private regulators. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Australia, the Clean Energy Regulator is like a government funded and managed regulator, so they run all the methodologies that produce Australian carbon credit units. But globally, there's actually other regulators who aren't government, they're private, who also offer carbon credit, like carbon farming, methodologies, and they have their own credits. So one of them, for example, is Verra, and they offer VCUs, verified carbon units, as their carbon credits, and that's sort of like an internationally recognized tradable carbon unit. So and that's, you know, that's really big all around the rest of the world, and it's just sort of like an alternative to ACCUs. I suppose one of the things that is a benefit of that is there is a bit of sovereign risk involved with Australian carbon credit units, like we saw last year when the ACCU price took a big dive after Taylor released all those carbon credit contracts, and it sort of went from $55 down to like $20. So that's you know, it is quite a key concern of a lot of farmers as well, actually, playing into these programs, because, you know, everyone's so wary of blue gums and how that whole scheme unfolded. So that's sort of one of the things that is a bit of a thing. But yeah, and there are others as well that are playing in the space, like this Gold Standard, and then there's actually a whole raft of them, and it's a bit of a land grab. You've got to be careful about understanding which ones are actually stacking up, because there are some sort of cheap and nasties out there, and ACCUs are pretty well regarded as having a higher rigor, like scientifically rigorous, but they're not the only thing out there. So we're sort of looking to develop other methodologies alongside some of these.
Okay. And
private
one final
regulators.
question. I noticed the methodologies you've spoken around, basically around plantings and soil carbon. Are you not doing anything in the avoided clearance space or any of those other methodologies?
No, when we first came into it, we started with reforestation, because that was with FullCAM modeling being the way it is, that was sort of the easiest one to sort of build our DIY model off. And also we just sort of saw a lot of opportunity there and identified it as being quite a rigorous methodology, scientifically speaking, and then we always wanted to get into soil because that's where the most interest was from farmers. So we branched out into soil and then into plantation forestry. But we've sort of steered clear of HIR and avoided deforestation because we're always a little bit suspect of it. We do think there's a couple of holes in there, and obviously there's been a lot of limelight cast onto some of those holes recently. Yeah, well, I mean, we're not definitely not going to get into it at some point, but we're sort of just, you know, biting it off chunk by chunk because there is quite a lot involved in getting your head around a methodology and being able to deliver it. So we do have our hands pretty full for the time being, but we're sort of mostly leaving avoided deforestation and HIR to the existing players.
Great, thank you.
Christoph. You're on mute, mate.
Sorry. Thanks, Wally. You mentioned Verra, do you deal with them directly or do you go through the whatever the carbon friendly local enterprise?
No, I think we've been dealing with them directly. I personally haven't been involved in the work that we've been doing with them, sort of exploratory work. But I don't think we've been doing it through Carbon Friendly, though I hear they have been doing some work developing something alongside Verra as well. Yeah. Have you had any experience?
They do. Okay. Yeah.
With some of the private regulators, Christoph?
Yeah. Well, through Carbon Friendly, that's what I was asking. I've never dealt with Verra directly, but I currently have 2 projects with Carbon Friendly.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's an interesting for somebody who's been brainwashed into the RF methods. It's very, very, very interesting the way they see additionality so different
Yeah.
from the way we see it. So it's a bit of a shock to the system when you see that. But I think there's a lot of potential because it's a lot more flexible. And I by no means mean to say that we should reduce the integrity of the IQ system. No way. But the added flexibility could be appealing to a lot of people, especially at the small end. It lowers the bar of accessibility quite a bit. So it's interesting.
Yeah. It is super interesting. I 100% agree with you. And yeah, it does seem to be a lot more flexible, which that's always kind of played on my mind a little bit, to the fact that it does allow for so many more circumstances, like because it's so much more flexible. Like I'm sometimes a little bit shocked that it does stand up on a global scale, on a global standard of being so scientifically rigorous and well regarded, when it does allow for so many sort of concessions.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you know, they do seem to be really highly regarded. So that's great.
Yeah. And for those of us on the phone in Queensland, they do allow native vegetation sequestration in non-cadex areas, which I think is an enormous potential. Now, the flip side of that, of course, is that the credits are not Australian, therefore they're not credited to Australia GSG's accounts. So that's a bit of a indeed, but it does open a lot of possibilities.
It does. Yeah. But yeah, it is just because they're different products. It is a different ball game on that market side, isn't it? I think it's just more to get your head around.
That was an amazing bunch of questions. Toby, can I ask you to also give us an idea of the price list or the brochure? You said you might send that through if you could, or bring it up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll send it through to you, Wardy, and then you can pass it on to the rest of the crew. I'll also send through a couple of our articles, like blog pieces that might be specifically of interest. In terms of pricing it up, it's kind of hard to just give a broad strokes, figure as to how much a carbon project will cost you. But we're totally happy on a case, like a project by project basis, like to have a conversation and sort of provide a free indicative assessment. So that's how our process generally works, is that we can have a chat, identify the piece of land and chat through what the sort of assumptions would be for that project in particular. And then we can apply, like it only has to be a couple of key ones, and then we can apply sort of broad assumptions for the rest, just to give an indication of whether it's a potentially viable project that's worth pursuing. And then we can, also provide an understanding of what likely costs will be for a project of that nature. So yeah, would love to chat further if anyone has anything in mind, or even if you'd just like to work through one, like a test case one. Even if you just like, it can be any piece of land, doesn't necessarily have to be a farm specifically that you're working with, and we can just just to get a feel for our process, I can work through it with you, no worries.
Well, I think that would be really handy as a case study. That's kind of what we want to do with the Queensland farmers early next year.
Of course, yeah.
Going to work. We also have Christoph's kind of got a world full of learned experience, but not translated experience, that we want to also case study with those farmers. And then the third one is the carbon store. So they've got, similar to you guys, a full cam interrogation model, and then they've built in a financial model that from the outputs of the CSV and the plot file can give you an IRR and a potential financing structure that falls out of it. So by looking at all three, we hope that by middle of next year we'll be able to go, these tools work across these projects in this way to help you. But as you know, you only do 3 projects, 3 methods. The other methods might be more appropriate, say, for our landscape impact program in the Trap Rock. So we just have to keep our doors open. But we are keen to do a case study and share the learnings. Christoph, I saw you had your hand up again, so there's no rush for time. feel free to jump in, mate. And you're probably on mute.
Did I have my hand up again? Sorry, that was a mistake.
Ah, no problems. Anybody else got questions for Toby? Otherwise, I'll kindly ask him to leave and we'll continue our meeting. Toby, you've got a leave pass, buddy. Thank you very
Awesome.
much. For,
Thanks so much for
joining.
that, guys. Yeah, cool. And looking forward to chatting further in that
Thank you.
that land impact project, the round table exercise. I think that'll be really interesting. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, are we getting together next week? I think, or with
Oh, next
Rebecca?
week. Oh, cool.
I hope so.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Excellent.
All
Have
right.
we got Toby's
Cool.
contact details, Sporty?
I will pass them around when I get the price sheet and the brochures. I'll
Sure,
make
thanks.
sure Toby's details go with them.
Yep.
Cool.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, mate.
That was awesome. Thank you, Toby.
See ya.
Thank you.
And welcome, Adam. How are you, mate? Long time no see.
Yeah, doing good. Thanks, Wardy. I
Yeah.
think I missed most of Toby's presentation, but there were some good questions there to follow up. So that was
Yeah, I think you missed 100% of his presentation.
yeah.
I'm glad you're here, actually. Christoph, I was going to ask you, but not waited till Toby left. What's the situation with Mackay and yourself with Adam, and yeah, how's that planning up and coming together?
Absolutely zero news from Mackay, and I do apologize if I missed the fact that I had to do something. I was more on waiting, gleefully waiting and not doing anything. I do apologize if I had to. I didn't understand that. We did touch base with Adam a couple of weeks ago, but haven't since then. Adam, and I'm keen to do that again if you can this coming 2 days. We're on the mutual.
Yeah, I'm actually flying to Canada tomorrow, so I'll be off for a few weeks.
Oh.
So
Good on you. Don't worry. We'll pick it up when you come back.
Enjoy Canada. When you're back, though, it might be perfect timing. So the McDonald's thing is sort of kicking into gear around Mackay. And yesterday, the sugar industry wants to do a similar thing to the McDonald's one. And as you know, we've got a concentration of sugarcane growers around Mackay. And one of them in particular, Adrian Zab, owns 4 of the CRTs in the area that produce or have hundreds of farmers as customers in the sugarcane industry. So that I expect that early next year to mid next year, Mackay becomes a significant player, both because of McDonald's and the sugarcane. So,
Wardy, do you need me anything to push that along, or is it bubbling on its own?
it's bubbling along on its own at the moment, but always happy
Cool.
to get input from you. Yeah. We
Oh yeah, no. Just yeah. If it needed a bit of a push, I would be happy to, but it's bubbling. I've got more project than I can poke a stick at, so that's good. But if you need me, do call, please. Yeah.
Sure. And then the other thing to just report back on is the McDonald's thing is looking like it's really doing well. Rowan gave this presentation in Canberra over the last little while, yesterday and today. You'll be familiar with this idea. Farmers collect their data with their digital twin. Regen advisors help them navigate. And what's coming is on our website now. I don't know when the last time you were there was, but Regen Farmers Mutual, we now have Explore Net Zero, Good Steward, and this Green Provenance product. The Green Provenance product is actually using the Australian Agricultural Sustainability Framework to collect data. And so how that helps in, say, the McDonald's case is the farmer is collecting their ESG data through that question set when they're onboarded. and using the version 2.0 of the National Farmers Federation data code, we're then able to put that into the reporting platform that the processor has, who can then report that up the line to government or to, sorry, McDonald's head office. So the digital twins are enabling those farmers to have standardized agreements for their data sharing from the digital twin to this aggregating platform. And it's able to let the supply chain know basically how much and with how much confidence carbon is in the system from a batch of, say, cattle that went through a processor. It's also able to look at the biodiversity reportings on those same pieces of land and deforestation through reference to the slats. And so that AASF question set, it goes to the heart of beef sustainability or the New South Wales biodiversity credits that are coming online, or CBA's green finance. And farmers can get that question set, which is a massive long set of questions, instead of what you would be used to when you do a traditional onboarding, which is, you know, the questions that we've asked them since day one. This will be 111 questions, I think, in total. But at the end of that, they'll be able to report with a degree of confidence back against the Australian Agricultural Sustainability Framework, which is, you know, the foundational piece of ESG data that every industry will use. And then beef will have its nuances, sugarcane would have its nuances, grain, etc., will have their nuances. But we've made really good progress with that product, and I expect that 2023 we'll see mostly us working with supply chains and landscape impact programs, and that gives a big enough block of farmers to keep each regen advisor in business, like with lots of stuff to do. So any questions on that? Hopefully some.
Yeah, I have a question. It'd be good is there a more explanatory sort of deck that you can send to us that we can read through and understand those products and how they work? That was the first thing. And I guess the second thing is the outcomes verification that you had on that slide show there. Where is that sitting?
The which one?
Outcomes verification.
Do you mean?
Yeah,
Sorry.
in that.
Yep.
Yeah.
This one?
No, further up. Further up. No, in the other one. Sorry, the one that Rowan's been showing around Canberra.
Yeah, this is that.
Oh yeah. So third slide.
This one here.
Yeah, there. So you've
Yeah.
got a whole bunch of different things there, and you can see there's certain correlations with different products. So I was just wondering about the outcomes verification.
Yeah, I mean, we're just mainly talking generic outcomes, not ecological outcome verification through land to market or a certified organic outcome. But basically saying that, you know, if we do the measurement, it's captured in the twin, we can do the measurement to a level of fidelity that we know what the outcome is, and that farmers can get payment for that outcome.
Yeah, okay.
So what if McDonald's actually said what information they want in the twin?
No, we've got 9 questions for this pilot that we're doing, but there's still internal problems at McDonald's. So they got rid of a girl called Susie, who was the sustainability manager.
Yep.
Not replacing her till the new year. So McDonald's is kind of stuck in Australia. Globally, McDonald's is still pushing ahead with this, and Mick Taylor, who's our contact in McDonald's, is trying to get us this pilot
Yeah.
going with the Mackay farmers.
Is that Landcare Mick Taylor? That guy? Yeah.
So,
So have any of these companies that say they want supply chain support, I guess, from a thing like the digital twin or anything the same? So just to give you an idea of what's informing my thinking about this, I haven't come across any other corporations that know what they want. And this week I spoke to Asahi, so the drink for beverages people, and they're just researching it. And I said, you know, what's the service that you want to help you with your supply chain traceability? And they looked at me blankly and said, we don't know. We've got no idea. And these are the people who are actually going to make decisions. So is there anyone that actually in corporate Australia, in the food companies, that actually knows what they want?
No, but the AASF is the base stone. So they'll have to, the AASF is like got the weight around it in Australia. So the National Farmers Federation, KPMG's, Open Ag Tech, all of the government peeps that have been there in the last 2 days have gathered around this community of practice for AASF. And so we think it will form the ESG reporting requirements from agriculture. And then based on your commodity, you'll have certain question sets that, you know, relate to carcass width and weight and stuff for beef, which wouldn't be relevant for canola or grains, etc.
No. Okay.
Rob, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
What's lip reading like, Audie?
It's shithouse.
You're on mute, Rob.
Okay.
I know what that one means. That one.
So Toby was talking about the corporates, and we've got corporates up here. You met the other Toby at my seminar we had here, and most of those farmers were lifestylers, if you like. And I suppose Toby up here is working for some of the bigger end of town. I haven't had any inquiries from any corporates in this area through Regen Farmers Mutual. Is there likelihood to some come? Because that sounds like pretty much the only ones that are going to take this up.
Yes and no. There's not a huge amount of corporate ag companies, really. What he's talking about, farm families, you've got Gun Agri and SLM Partners, and lots of corporates own property, you know, now are starting to get into it. Macquarie's always had a portfolio, etc. There is probably 100 to 200 corporate ag players, right? Otherwise they are farm families and farm members, and that's sort of our market rather than corporates. But we've got Gun Agri wanting to put a digital twin on one of their places around Gunnedah, but it's not really the northern rivers.
Okay. All right. Well, obviously I would look forward to any opportunities there, because the other one's getting a bit hard to, you know. And Toby explained today why Ma and Pa are just not doing it.
Yeah. I mean, lifestylers have got a big boon recently. Did I talk to you guys about the 30 by 30 thing?
You did. I mean, I've been looking at that pretty intensely anyway.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of turning that into a product that we can tell farmers that you'll get this if you do that.
Yeah. And it's hard to say that we can at this stage. So
yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Cool. Any other questions, peeps? Otherwise, you might have earned yourself a 5-minute late mark. Sorry, I've run over. Questions, concerns, queries? All right. Well, let me just take this opportunity. I'll hopefully see most of you again before Christmas, either online or in person. We've got the AGM this Friday for both Regen Farmers Mutual and Regen Digital. Encourage you to come along to any of that. If I don't,
Yep. Oh,
hear
good.
from you, Merry Christmas, enjoy the holidays, etc. We'll go from there. I look forward to seeing you in 2023.
Thanks, Woody.
Thanks,
Good
Woody.
idea,
Good
thank
luck.
you.
Good luck with the
Yeah.
trip, Adam.
Yeah, thanks. Should be good. Looking forward to it.
Have a good Christmas, everyone.
Good
You
on you.
too.
Hey.